we're back, folks, here in WrestleRant. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and on the show, I talk about all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network, and today we're talking Rebellion 2001. So the weird thing about this show is that a majority of the shows that took place during the Invasion pay-per-view itself, SummerSlam was alright, but it seems like a lot of those fall pay-per-views just flat out fucking sucked. The Invasion itself was awful, but I don't know, I felt like a lot of those pay-per-views during that period of time in the fall of 2001 were really underwhelming because they were all about the Alliance, the Invasion, all this other shit, whatever. But this was a rare good pay-per-view. And again, like I talked about in my previous pay-per-view review, that these Rebellion shows are pretty underrated. I thought the 2000 show was good. This show was good too. And taking place over in Manchester, England, where they took place every single year, I really feel like, or no, the previous year took place in Sheffield, but taking place in England every year, rather, they were just pretty good shows that more often than not just got overlooked for whatever reason. But anyway, kicking off the show in a steel cage match for the Intercontinental Championship, Edge defending the gold against Christian in an all-right match. It really felt like, for whatever reason, that you knew that these guys could go out there and have a great fucking match. I think I talked about it in my No Mercy review last year. They had a good match on one of those shows. I think a ladder match in No Mercy. A steel cage match. This was after that. This took place after that. And an all-right match, but again, it just wasn't as great as I thought it was going to be. A really good match. They got good time. I thought the finish was cool, with Christian getting tied up in the cage and then Edge jumping over him to fall to the floor and retain his title, which I thought was good. But otherwise, it was just kind of like an underwhelming, slightly underwhelming, not largely underwhelming, but slightly underwhelming match for whatever reason. But Edge is still your Intercontinental Champion after that. Scotty 2 Hotty taking on the Hurricane up next, WWF versus Alliance. Fun little match for no real reason. It didn't really have much storyline significance other than being WWF versus Alliance. But it was a good match. I enjoyed it for what it was. I thought the Hurricane going for the, not the worm, but the slug, S-L-U-G, trying to spell it out. I botched it spelling it out. But it was a fun match that was won by Scotty 2 Hotty. After that, which was a total waste, Big Show squashing Diamond Dallas Page. They are no more than 10 seconds into the matchup before Big Show just knocks out Page right to the floor, straight to the mat, and then went on to dominate him for the next 3 minutes before winning, which is such a shame. I feel like of the many people that could have benefited from the lack of star power in the Alliance Invasion angle was DDP. He was one of the biggest names coming over from WCW. That wasn't Goldberg or Hogan, you know what I mean? He could have been a real star coming out of that thing, but once the whole feud with Undertaker bombed, and he had this shit, this was only months later, and it feels like they really just dropped the ball on this guy big time, but kind of a waste of a match. A triple threat tag team title match with the WWF tag team titles. The Dudley Boys defending the gold against the APA and the Hardy Boys. A match I feel like I've already seen like 100 times before. We saw something similar the year prior with Dudley Boys edging Christian and TNA, which was all right. This was more of the same, just without the tables. So again, a good match. Dudley Boys retain the belts to retain the WWF tag team titles, which I think it says here on Wikipedia that they were the WWF Tag Team Championships, but for whatever reason, I remember watching the show just yesterday, and it said the WCW Tag Team titles. I might be mistaken, but whatever. Still a good match, nevertheless. After that, William Regal versus Tajiri. Good match. Again, not much storyline significance other than just being WWF versus Alliance. Regal wins. Tajiri blasts him afterwards with the Green Mist. Fun match. I think this was long before they started teaming, so they would start teaming a little bit while afterwards. But anyway, so a fun match for what it was, and they always had better chemistry as partners than they did opponents. So after that, Chris Jericho defended the WCW Championship against Kurt Angle in a match that you knew was going to be an instant classic, instant mat classic. And that's exactly what it was, a really strong wrestling match. Jericho brought his A-game, Angle brought his A-game. Jericho is another guy that really kind of stood out as a star during the Alliance and early on in 2002. But one of my biggest gripes of his reign was that he always fucking lost. Not that he lost, but he always won not only via chicken shit heel tendencies, but with the most over-the-top cheating. You got to watch it in order to know what I'm talking about. But if you've seen the Rumble, No Way Out, it always seemed like he won his matches by the skin of his teeth. And it's like, oh, that's what makes a good heel. Yeah, I can understand that argument, but once he dropped the belt, no one saw him as a threat, and he was gone from the main event scene for the next fucking 3 or 4 years before he left the company. You know what I mean? So it really did not do him any favors, in my opinion, but that being said, I will commend the company for once during this time period with Jericho, and that they booked him right here. He beat Angle clean via a roll-up, but he beat him clean. No distractions, no nothing. He won clean to retain his title, to retain the WCW Championship. And again, really, really good match. Just give him a couple more minutes. It could have been more special than it was, but still a great match between Jericho and Angle, as one can only expect from them. A women's tag team match, Divas tag team match, whatever, between Tori Wilson and Lita, taking on the Alliance of Stacy Keibler and Mighty Molly, with Trish Stratus as the special guest referee. Throwaway tag team match. It was just kind of there. Went 4 or 5 minutes before Tori Wilson and Lita won. Whatever. Main event time. Downright, hands down the best match on the entire show. Stone Cold Steve Austin defending the WWF Championship against The Rock in another classic encounter that I had no idea existed. Because I know The Rock faced Booker T a few times during the Alliance. He faced Kurt Angle multiple times. Stone Cold did as well. He faced everyone else during his reign as WWE Champion. I know he won the belt, dropped the belt, won it back again in the fall. Another successful title defense for Stone Cold on this show against The Rock. But as great a match as one can expect from Rock and Stone Cold. And again, another a very not that it was forgettable, but it feels like it was very underrated. Like, I've never heard of this match taking place before I saw this pay-per-view. Obviously, I know of their various pay-per-view battles earlier on in their careers and at WrestleManias 15, 17, and 19. This was a WrestleMania rematch and a really big fucking deal. So why not that they blew it off. I'm not criticizing the company for doing the match at an England pay-per-view. I mean, the match, Rebellion wasn't really that big of a pay-per-view storyline-wise. They didn't really have much significance. Do we have any new champions crowned at all? I don't think so. I'm looking at the show. We have no new champions crowned at all, which doesn't surprise me, just because it was weeks away from Survivor Series when they would merge the titles, blah, blah, blah. But still a great match that I thoroughly enjoyed. I mean, we had some interference from Angle and Jericho from the previous match that would later set up the Undisputed Championship tournament at Armageddon the following month, but also kind of planting the siege for that, dissension between the Alliance and WWF and the Survivor Series tag team match that would take place weeks later. But still a really, really good main event that capped off a pretty entertaining show. Probably right on par, if not better, than the 2000 installment. So, once again, 2 thumbs up. I enjoyed Rebellion 2001. Definitely one of the better 2001 pay-per-views from that time period. A very strong main event and a great WCW title match. The undercard isn't like blow away amazing, but it served its purpose. It's solid. So overall, I give this show 2 thumbs up. So be sure to check it out on the WWE Network. So obviously, my next edition of WrestleRant, we will be capping off the WrestleRant series, the review series for Rebellion. So check that out, the 2002 installment. Beyond that, my review of 2015's Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. And then after that, we move forward, I believe, into the Armageddon reviews, which, believe it or not, I have not yet reviewed. So I look forward to watching and reviewing those shows for you fine folks. So until then, guys, I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch you guys down the road.